So let's be real. These are really unusual times that we're living in, and it's really hard to feel good with a whole lot. So then the question is, how do you try really hard to keep the negative thoughts at bay? My name's Janina. Welcome to This Life Reconsidered, where I focus on personal development and clarity, positive thinking, self care, and navigating the work life integration journey. If you're interested in getting videos like that, hit the subscription button down on the lower right. So, I'm going to say naively that all I thought I needed after the stroke was to just get better. I assumed that getting better was going to get me to the positivity and all the great flowery things that I had been hopeful would happen, which is I can go back to life as I knew it. I can just pick up where I left off and that everything will become clear. But none of that happened, at least not immediately that way. Instead, what ended up happening as a result of the stroke and recovering is that I realized that I was starting to evolve in the priorities that I held and the things that made me excited, and really much more intentional about what I wanted to start removing out of my life. Because if I've been given a chance to kind of recover and rebound from something so traumatic, physically and mentally, why was I going to waste it doing everything the exact same way? And that was when I started being much more intentional about the choices I was making. So I'm like, okay, you know what? It's time for me to reevaluate the way that I approach work. And I was a massive workaholic. Like, I'm talking about addicted to my work, 80-hour weeks, and realized, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be that kind of person. Or, you know what? I have these relationships and they're really toxic, and I need to start kind of distancing myself from that. And that was when it became clear that I was going to have to just really take a look at life as it existed for me and feel like I could start kind of adding my own order and removing the negativity and just starting to filter it. Now, this, yes, I start this and I introduce this and highlight that a lot of this realization came with the stroke, but we're now living in a global crisis, and we all come to our own awakenings in different types of ways. And regardless of whether you suffered something as traumatic as a stroke, or if you're going through your own reawakening because life has kind of imposed that on you, you are entitled to walk that path. But as you walk it, this is kind of like where you kind of have to start making those kinds of assessments of how you want to start living life, and also what negativities are kind of surrounding you, you know? And I'm saying this kind of with the very broad understanding that we are all kind of getting into a point where we start internalizing, and we get into a point where we start feeling really low or start doubting things. And so if we're going to kind of own and get control of that, then it's our job to, and our duty to ourselves, to figure out how to start kind of slowly starting to shove the negativity out of our universes and whatever holds us down. Now, with those nice, romantic, optimistic thoughts, and I know how how nice and easy I make it sound. And I don't profess to believe that it is easy, because I still wake up with the things that hold me down and the things that control me. We all do, because we're human, right? And that's the way life goes. But I've started to kind of I started to kind of wrap my head around a couple of really major ideas that I feel are the only way that I have started to kind of treat removing the negativity. Some of this I've picked up through a lot of navigation of kind of the recovery journey, and some of this through engagement with like the therapy that I was taking right after the stroke and things like that. Things that have really started to open up a lot of personal clarity. And I share this insight and this perspective with you as a survivor that had to kind of start addressing the negativity that I was feeling in my head. And so I thought it would be really beneficial to kind of share some of the gems that a lot of recovery and a lot of therapy has kind of inspired. I think a couple of those thoughts. The first one is that you have to trust that every event is leading to a much more intentional point. You know, something that I had a hard time grappling with as I was recovering from the stroke, and I even started arguing with some of my friends, was kind of like the idea and the reality that if I recovered, it was because it's part of a really weird journey that I haven't finished walking. I felt like in order to start kind of pulling myself out of the negativity that I was carrying, I had to start spending much more time on channeling my energy in the into the idea that I was kind of meant to survive it in order for me to kind of get to a bigger destination. And it was only a waste if I went and did everything the exact way that I was doing it before. Thinking about it that way is really optimistic, because it gives you something to look forward to. And only when you start having something to look forward to can you start kind of creating your own path. You can't really create a path if you're looking at the same negativity the same way. So that was something that kind of motivated and inspired me a bit. The second point was the idea that things are always going to not make sense. And if you obsess on all of the things that don't make sense, you're just going to kind of make yourself a little kind of like crazy and in your head. So as opposed to doing that, I choose to kind of let go of those pieces, because I can't figure it all right now, figure it out all right now, but eventually it may actually fall in line with something else a little later. So I think appreciating the fact that it doesn't all have to fit in at the same way and at the same time could also be a way of kind of allowing yourself to kind of embrace a much more positive outlook and letting go of the negativity that may be controlling you, especially if you're feeling held down by something really specific. The third point that I'll say is that I try to cling to when I'm trying to separate myself from the idea of negativity is, and this one's kind of a trip, is to focus on what matters right now. This is logic, you know, and the only thing that we owe ourselves right now is to make sure that we continue to embrace the positivity, because as much as we may lose sight of it, we still have some positivity to own and embrace. So whether that's family, whether that's your best friends, whether that's, you know, kind of like your puppy, whatever that is. And I say that because I look at my puppy right now, but we all have kind of those positivities that we need to embrace. And thinking this way allowed me to kind of stop fixating on the reality that I had had the stroke and be much more positive about the fact that I was still alive. And because I was alive, now I had these really amazing things to celebrate. 4, the point that I had to kind of allow myself to separate from the negativity that I was carrying is remembering to live a life lived and filled of passion. And it's one thing to just kind of focus on like the immediate and the static things, but I mean, it's going to be really hard to see above the trees if there aren't things that you can really just genuinely get excited about. What is it that you turn to when the world is holding you down? Basically, giving yourself some type of escape and some type of outlet to channel your own energy and your own creativity is where you can find peace, because there's going to be a lot of things that are always going to inevitably get in our way. So the only way to avoid that being all consuming is by allowing yourself to embrace the passion. What is it that ignites you? And there's something re-energizing about a passion that you can commit yourself to. Idea 5 that I try to cling to when I'm trying to let go of negativity is that slumps come to an end. And the reason that this one is also really, really important is because if you can think about a negative period as a temporary and as a moment, then it's a lot easier to kind of get through and navigate it, because that's the only way you can kind of put it behind you. I think that when you're kind of trying to kind of walk the path of letting go of negativity, you have to remember that it's a phase. And if possible, that it's meant to kind of give you a life lesson to grow from. But it is a temporary moment and it's going to give way to something else. And so just walk the path as you're meant to and call it a day. I think only by doing that can you start to give yourself the positivity that you owe yourself. Now, fighting negativity is an active, proactive effort that you have to be willing to take. And I get up every day and have to fight that negativity, but I also have to find myself kind of embracing the steps and the desire to let go of it. So whether that's throwing myself back into my passion, whether that's finding myself reminded of my family, finding myself, inspired by the facts that there's something better at the end, whatever, or maybe a combination of all these things. Finding myself holding on to all that is the only thing that will allow me to truly be the kind of person that can at least stare negativity and allow myself to treat it as a speed bump to where I'm supposed to be. So I know fighting negativity is a personal thing. Give it a think. I mean, how do you deal with this kind of thing? How do you fight it? How does it take a toll on you? How do you address it? How do you combat it? Please share some thoughts. I would love to kind of get some advice and inspiration as well, and share those additional insights in a future video. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you at the next one.